Justin Trudeau and various levels of government have created an era of policing that no one could possibly be proud of in Canada. As a young boy, my childhood heroes typically came in the form of police or military men. Even in the 80s, I knew I was gravitating towards this archetype. My worldview was that generally people were good, but some were bad, and the good needed to be protected from the bad. Very black and white, yet very unsophisticated and naive. In the last year of high school, Paul Bernardo and his wife Carla Homolka had brutally murdered two young women and were responsible for killing her own sister. I lived in St. Catharines, Ontario at the time. I remember distinctly when the couple were caught. A task force was set up and many police were forced to watch videotapes of the murders and rapes of these teenagers, as well as reviewing the forensic evidence of their dismembered bodies. There was a media ban in Canada, thankfully. The horrific details of those murders was not easily shared with the public, and only the most depraved went looking from U.S. papers who didn't have a ban. I had also learned that all of the officers and support staff later needed to undergo trauma counseling because of what they had been obligated to see in the performance of their duties. I've had my own experiences with violence, as well as the murder of one of my childhood friends when I was 16 years old, who was killed by the father of one of my other childhood friends. Not long after Bernardo and Homolka had been arrested, I learned that Carla was a regular customer of someone very close to me at the time. These psychopaths had been under our noses the entire time. To say that this awful tragedy had shaped my perception about the horrors of police experience would be a gross under-exaggeration. What I took away from the experience is that I wasn't made of the right psychological material to ever become a police officer. But I'm not sure many are, and they realize it far too late. I often recommend prospective police applicants I know to read On Combat by Lieutenant Colonel retired David Grossman. You have to know what you're getting yourself into when you sign up to be a police officer. And it's more than just the pay, benefits, and time off. You have to understand the psychological impact policing will have on you and your family. I don't know one single police officer who has not suffered psychological harm or PTSD as a direct result of the experiences they've endured while performing their duties. I once told my son that if I ever learned he was disrespecting a police officer for no good reason, he had better hope the police officer arrested him. Obviously, I was being dramatic to highlight the importance of my respect for police. To his credit, my son did ask me why. I explained to him that a police officer deals with the worst that society has to offer on a daily basis. They don't call to be thanked. They get called because people's lives are no longer manageable, and the police need to intervene. The underbelly of society, which the rest of the population will never interact with, is the domain of the police officer. I further explained that when a soldier deploys to a conflict zone, it is the police who protect the soldier's family, and when the soldier returns, it is the police who protect the soldier. But since the beginning of the pandemic, my trust and faith in the police has been absolutely shattered, and I realized just how naive I had been about the integrity of policing as an institution within our society. After my experiences in Ottawa on 18 and 19 February 2022, how can I ever trust the police again or its institution? Unless something radical happens, I don't believe I fully will again. On Canada Day, I was asked to give a speech in Ottawa on Parliament Hill. I never gave that speech. I couldn't. I couldn't because what I witnessed was a crowd so broken and so utterly disgusted with the Ottawa Police Service and many other services, they couldn't help but do everything to antagonize the police that afternoon. And I don't blame them. The police destroyed their reputations and public trust all by themselves. I attempted to calm the crowd and find some compassion for the role of the police, but I was wrong to try, and the crowd was not ready to hear it. The result was just more anger. Prior to the first lockdown, it was my beliefs that the police would never go against the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, especially since they too had families and wouldn't want to see other police conducting themselves so aggressively towards their families. In this regard, I was wrong and also right. Not all, but the vast majority of police around this country appeared to have forsaken their oaths, not only in Canada, but in much of the world. The Toronto Police Service, Montreal, Quebec, Calgary, and especially the RCMP showed themselves to be highlights of the worst that the police had to offer. These police forces seem to be the underbelly of policing. Unjust attacks, excessive fines for simply exercising your Charter Section 2 rights to assemble were violated by police with impunity for months. Abuse of authority and police brutality seemed to be the new normal. In December 2021, 2 female police officers in Calgary, Alberta, arrested a young man for playing outdoor hockey in a public park. At one point, they threatened to tase the man and then physically attacked him and poorly and unprofessionally executed their arrest. Arresting anyone in Canada for playing hockey was a bridge too far for some police officers. The next day, I learned about a new group of police officers on Facebook calling themselves Police on Guard for Thee. It was started originally by 2 active duty police officers and very quickly grew in numbers by the real police that I had always believed in and truly respected and supported. Police on Guard had quickly grown, but to their dismay, not nearly enough police had joined the group, which in itself is troubling. Police on Guard gave many officers an outlet to state their objections, but the group wasn't getting the support they had hoped for initially. That is until the RCMP mandated the COVID-19 injection after almost a year of Police on Guard's existence. Other police departments followed suit. It wasn't until police officers had actual skin in the game did they discover their moral courage to push back a tiny bit. Where were the Pelian principles? To further compound the loss of the public's trust in police, other institutions started enacting their own illegal mandates, and they were, and still are, using the police to enforce them. I want to state this point very clearly, given all that I have described. There is a difference between a cop who joins for benefits and a police officer who joined to protect and serve the public, and to abide by the Pelian principles. The Pelian principles summarize the ideas that Sir Robert Peel developed to define an ethical police force. The approach expressed in these principles is commonly known as policing by consent. In this model of policing, police officers are regarded as citizens in uniform. They exercise their powers to police their fellow citizen with the implicit consent of these fellow citizens. Policing by consent indicates that the legitimacy of policing in the eyes of the public is based upon a general consensus of support that follows from transparency about their powers, their integrity in exercising those powers, and their accountability for doing so. I'm doing this video because I want the public to focus their attention on the difference between a virtuous police officer fighting for them and the cops. We cannot simply condemn all police for the actions of the majority of the police simply because we are hurt, angry, and afraid. We cannot devolve into a mob seeking revenge against the police that have betrayed their oath. We have the right to justice, but never a right to revenge. When we peacefully assemble, as is our right, and we provoke the police, it will invoke a very costly response which has historically achieved nothing except a further degradation of the public's trust in policing. The worst possible thing that can happen is for the best and most virtuous police we have to lose our support and walk away from policing altogether. We need the best police to stay and rise through the ranks in order to advocate and take action on our behalf. They can't and won't do that if we lose hope in them. Here comes the hard part. And yes, it's going to be incredibly hard to do. The public are going to have to extend the olive branch. In the minds of the police leaders, they've done nothing wrong. But I think the biggest impact will be done through better communications with the police, not through antagonizing or aggressive behavior. In the past, the police have tried a hearts and minds strategy with the public. This time, it's the public that will need to focus on the hearts and minds of the police. What the success of that looks like is a little more unclear. We have already experienced the failure of that many times before, especially in Ottawa, Toronto, Calgary, and Montreal, and other places. I've often wondered what the number of moral injuries have been to the rank and file police who have repeatedly participating in these acts against the public. I have no doubt there are police who are suffering in silence for failing to protect the public as their bosses gave orders counter to their moral values. I'm not convinced that the leadership of policing facilitates a Peel-principled relationship between the public and the police officer. It appears that police discretion, which has always been foundational to public service, has been marginalized completely over the last 3 years. When the police officer feels they must follow orders, regardless of the impact to the public's trust, that's not service or protection. I firmly believe leadership starts at the top, the very top. Given our experiences during COVID-19, the real questions then become, are the rank and file properly positioned to serve and protect the public, or only serve the interests of the government? I am left with only more questions. Should the onus be on the public to win the hearts and minds of the police, or should it be the other way around? When one police officer does something absolutely horrific, in the cowardice vein of just following orders, do we paint all police with that same villainous brush? Are the police, in general, still worthy of our respect? If yes, why? If not, then how do we move forward and reinstill the confidence in their role in society again? From my perspective, if we don't restore the Peel principle, the next time a government moves against the public, and they absolutely will, it will be much easier for the police to attack the public again, like they did during lockdowns. Unfortunately, it will become easier for the public to retaliate against the police in a violent manner. Nobody wants that. Either way, if we don't collectively repair the damage, we all lose as a society.